Now, larger than just Obama, sir, and the re-election. I mean, that's all scripted. That's clear. Why else are they doing this? Because, I mean, we see the frame up now of Pakistan going into high gear saying Bin Laden was at this house.
Well, one of the reasons they're doing it so that they basically can pull out of Pakistan. They can try to leave Afghanistan and Iraq with the sense that there was a victory. There is no victory because there was no clear designation as to what the war would accomplish. We have no idea what the war accomplished other than 10 years of wasted bodies and brave men and women and $333 billion a year. Secondly, we've now have a very serious economic issue with unemployment still up, exceedingly high, much higher than the designations. We have a banking crisis that hasn't been resolved. In 3 years, we've had banks after banks, Chase, Morgan Stanley, J.P. Morgan and Chase, Bank of America, all of them have committed crimes beyond the reason of the doubt. If you look at the Banking Commission report that's done by our own federal government, they indict them. And there's basically no attention to them, and nobody has even been prosecuted. And Obama went back to them yesterday and asked them for more money. They're going to raise $1 billion. We're also in a position where we are not doing very well in the international arena. We have literally lost our basic strategic superpower position. Although we have a large army, we're basically in the same position that the British military was in the 1900s, a very large army without a strategy, without a cause, and without a country. I often said to our military, we have an army without a country, and I say to our country that we have a country without a military. Because right now it's costing us a fortune. We have no benefits derived from it. There are no enemies that we have other than the internal security of our country, which depends really on the debt, as you clearly said, and our financial growth, which is very low, 2 to 3%, and the fact that our bond ratings will be downgraded perhaps to a C or whatever the levels are. We have further problems. We have the notion that a system is not working, and that's what I keep coming back to since I said 10 years ago when we had Bush Jr., now we have Obama. We elect people who are basically panderers without any history of accomplishment, without any history of success, other than the fact that they pandered their way and agreed to acquiesce to anybody who's giving them money or power and represent other interests. Now, I'm not degrading anybody. I've treated politicians and I've worked with them. But basically the notion of a politician servicing the United States of American needs is absurd. We don't need these people anymore, and if we think we do, then we're mistaken because we're going to keep going on from administration to administration, from lie to lie, and from incompetence to incompetence. All of these people are reshuffled again. You have Panetta, who was in the Clinton administration, was not a great performer, now coming in from the CIA where he was dysfunctional to now heading up the Secretary of Defense.
Stay there. We've got the real live Patriot Games, Jack Ryan, Dr. Steve Pieczenik going into overdrive. Stand by. InfoWars Doctor. Talking, at the end of the break, I was asking there, what is the goal? We know it's a re-election kickoff. We can see the scripting, the choreographing, the ridiculous. We threw Bin Laden in the ocean. The 6 years he's in Pakistan. Obviously, they want to start framing Pakistan, putting pressure on them. They caught the CIA guy reportedly with the uranium, trying to get it to militants as some type of way to put pressure on Pakistan's nuclear program. But what are the other reasons for them doing this? Because I'm scanning the news here while we're live, and 48 hours into this, it's completely turning around against them, and hoax, 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 hoax is the byword. They're on Facebook everywhere trying to block and ban people like I've never seen on their own Facebook saying it's a hoax. It looks like a rout is beginning. And, folks, I don't just say things like a cheerleader. I'm telling you now, this looks like a rout of this hoax. That's why they're now saying they're going to try to release a real photo. Dr. Pieczenik.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Alex. One of the things that I think the politicians never calculated on is that the American public is a lot smarter than the politicians. Let me repeat that again. I think we, the American people, are a lot smarter. We can smell a PSYOPs operation. We can smell the fake. We can smell when it's orchestrated. And this was orchestrated. I mean, when you have people sitting around and watching a sitcom, basically the Operations Center in the White House, and you have a president coming out almost zombie-like telling you that they just killed Osama Bin Laden, who was already dead 9 years ago, and people are aware of shows like yours, quite frankly. Alex, you've been a very important part of inserting the truth in a time when most media was really going to the common denominator and the lowest. The fortunate part is that thank God for the alternative media and thank God for the American public. They're a lot smarter, and the world public's a lot smarter. I understand that you're listened to in the Middle East by millions of people. You've offered them a lot of facts. There's nothing you really said that I didn't agree with 9 years ago. And when I said to you, Osama Bin Laden's dead because they need to get out of there, they need to have a conclusion where the president's getting reelected, all the issues we talked about. Now the American public is saying, we're tired. We're sick and tired of the nonsense that was given to us by Clinton, by Bush, and certainly now by Obama. We want jobs. We want to manufacture. We don't want to be overseas. We want to develop our own country. We want to know that we can be proud of what we've done and forget the rest of the world where we're making up wars that don't exist and terrorists who never were. And the TSA, as you said, who's reaching down to your pants and are not really required. I've never seen anything like this in my whole life. So the answer is, one issue that's very important is that the American public has to understand these people are not smarter than the American public. They're just not. They may believe they're smart. If you look at the background of Osama Bin Laden, he did not do very well in school. He was at a 2-year college, which was not very good. He didn't do that well in Columbia, and I think he got into Harvard on affirmative action. But the real issue is, and his own wife was in on affirmative action, I think the real issue is if we have the same benefits that he had, I think we would have achieved so-called elite status. But the bottom line is very simple. The American public is a lot smarter. Anybody who has to work on a day-to-day basis, whether I'm in Montana or on the East Coast, you've got to farm. You've got to build. You have a mechanic shop. You're a trucker. You've got to figure out exactly what the cost of goods are, what the profit margins are, and how you can pay your income. These guys in Congress and the Senate have never had to do that. If you look at the benefits of what they have, and you look at the White House benefits of what they have, we basically have a royalty and a kingship. We didn't have a wedding in England. What we had was a marriage of the absurd and the psyops here in America when Bin Laden was just resurrected in this greatest falsehood I've ever heard. I mean, it was absurd.
Stay there, Dr. Pieczenik. The real-life Jack Ryan of the Patriot Games with us now. We'll be right back to continue breaking this down. Who knows? We'll just keep them the whole hour if you can do it and take your phone calls. We've got a lot more to talk about. Breaking this down. We'll be right back. Dr. Steve Pieczenik is a board-certified psychiatrist. That's the medical doctor end of the whole system. And he was a psychological warfare expert, chief, brought in by the Pentagon against the Russians, you name it. He is the character that Jack Ryan and others, Tom Clancy, is based on. That's on record from Tom Clancy. He himself is the author and creator of 26 New York Times bestsellers and the advisor on many of Clancy's books. You can see all of that at stevepieczenik.com. So folks always wonder why Tom Clancy knows so many inside things that end up happening later. Here's one of his chief guys giving him the intel. I know you don't like to talk about yourself, but you are an interesting person, and it also goes to credibility. Here you are 9 years ago and change, 9 years and a month, April 22nd, 2002, and you say he died of this disease. I saw it in the CIA documents, the disease he had. This is the word. I have this from inside sources. You're a CFR fellow at the time. You've worked under James Baker, George Shultz, Cyrus Vance, Henry Kissinger as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and Senior Policy Planner under those secretaries. Right. And here you are saying Bin Laden's dead. And he's on ice to be rolled out later. Then two other White House sources tell me the same thing years later. Then Albright comes out on Fox. All these other things happen. And, I mean, it's important for folks to hear some of your background to understand that now we're here. We're living it. We're seeing it. And then before we go to some calls, I want you to specifically, again, because you keep saying, well, they're not as smart as you think they are, why they're doing it, why they think they came out with this ridiculous Bin Laden announcement that's so cartoonish that is blowing up in their face. The foreign media, the domestic, it is just overwhelming the inconsistencies. Even the Washington Post and others are like, well, they're conspiracy theorists, but it is weird that they threw him in the ocean. It is weird there were fake photos. It is weird they claim they killed him 8 other times. I was talking to the Washington Post lady. And she was like, everybody in the office doesn't believe it. She was giggling, and I said, do you understand? This isn't funny. They lied about WMDs. They lied about it all. We're in a very serious time. But tell folks a little bit about yourself. I mean, give us a snapshot of your career.
Right, well, very quickly, I went to Harvard and MIT at the same time, not because I was so smart, but because Harvard wasn't as good as I thought it was. I got a psychiatric degree at Harvard and a PhD international affairs under Lucian Pai. I was trained in psychological warfare, propaganda, counterintelligence, counterterrorism. I went right into the State Department working for Lawrence Eagleburger and became the head of the Office of Combat Terrorism. I created that. I worked against Arafat as a terrorist, and then years later I worked with Arafat as a statesman. So one of the things you have to remember in the world of terrorism, that today's terrorist is tomorrow's statesman. That was true of Menachem Begin. That was true of many of the terrorists that we worked with and now became statesmen. It was true of our own founding fathers who were created as terrorists and now come out as statesmen. I then went on to remain in the Carter administration, where I was involved in the regime change of Aldo Moro. I neutralized the Red Brigade, the P2 scandal. I indicted Berlusconi then. I'm sorry he ever came back. I left under Carter. I resigned, refused to go to Iran because I had Ramsey Clark there, and I thought it would be a disaster. I went on then to create businesses. My real love, and this country's great love, why I feel I'm a very strong American, is that I'm an entrepreneur. I'm what we call an angel investor. I use my own money to create businesses and start them up and build them. Not because it's the money. I'm more than happy to lose the money. It's because only in America can I do what I've done all the time, which is be able to create a business like radio frequency identification, the Tom Clancy franchises, the TV shows, even radio shows, and now I'm doing nutraceuticals and I'm doing orphan drugs, and be able to succeed or fail, not by definition of money, but by definition of criteria that we built assets. I was not interested in pushing papers or money back and forth, but I was interested in serving my country, which I really served for free and most of the time. I was promoted to colonel at a very early age of 32. I refused promotion to general, brigadier general at 37, because I felt not that I wanted to be in the Army, but I felt I could serve my country best by going back out into public service and into private service, and then offer my services for free, make my money outside on my own, and then come back and serve my country through the military and other organizations, and be able to go overseas for our country and offer strategic advice if they listen to it. If not, I came back under Reagan and worked on the Soviet Union. I was out at the Rand Corporation for a year under a man called Richard Solomon, who brought me in to say develop the Soviet takedown, the psychological operation. We were involved. Bush Sr. was really, under Reagan, the really impetus for the takedown of the Soviet Union, East Germany. I then came back under Bush Sr., and I was involved in the bringing the peace treaty under James Baker to bring a regime change under Pol Pot without using any wars, without using any soldiers. My point is, most of the things that I've done, and I've done a lot in the Middle East against Habash, Hawatmeh, even in the Gaza Strip, where I worked with the PLO, against the PLO, and where, ironically, and this will be a soft spot for the Israelis, in '88, I was sent out by Schultz to find out what was going on with the PLO, and I found out that the Shin Bet of Israel in '88 was creating a group called Hamas, which was used as a counterforce to the PLO, and of course, eventually everybody learned that Hamas had a blowback, and now the Israelis have created their own Frankenstein. The point being that we are not the only country in the world to create our own Frankensteins through Al-Qaeda, which was really the Mujahideen before. I was involved with that under the Carter administration, subsequently another administration, but so was Israel involved in creating
Did you ever, to interrupt, Doctor, did you ever meet Osama Bin Laden?
Yes, I saw him in Afghanistan very briefly, but I was more involved with other operational concerns, particularly the Pakistanis.
What was his role in the war against the Russians, and what was he like when you did meet him?
Well, I didn't know him very well. Basically, I knew he was sick at the time. I knew he had renal disease, and I knew he had Marfan's. You could see that. But basically, the guys who were CIA operatives said he had a supportive role there, and he was financing most of the elements there. My interest was really more strategic.
Yeah, he was more of the Saudi Arabians' man in the field with the money delivery?
Correct. That was the understanding. That's exactly correct. He was not, from my point of view, he was not the keystone of the operations there. That really was a CIA operation. Most people think I worked with the CIA. I was not in the CIA, but that's neither here nor there. Even though I was a member of the CFR, I'm also a member of the Association of Foreign Intelligence Officer and National Military Intelligence Association. So all these associations may mean something to you, may not, but I'm primarily an American.
No, I understand, and it must be horrifying for you, Doctor, to know that, like the royal wedding, worshiping people that, who hereditarily got their power, who you have to get a, imperial mark in the past to be able to even have a business. Our forefathers and mothers came here to be able to build their own businesses, follow their own dreams, and now we see Obama giving thousands of waivers to select corporations that give him money. General Electric heads up his economic board. They get waivers for their coal plants and then shut down their competition. We're really entering this crony monopoly system. That's got to be horrifying for you.
Well, it's more than horrifying. It's called crony capitalism, and the banking episode was really beyond the pale for me. I was totally shocked, disgusted, and I was waiting for people to get indicted, and I still hope people will be indicted. Crony capitalism cannot work, whether it's with Republicans, Democrats, or independents. It cannot work. We have to stop it as Americans. This must stop in this administration and any future administrations. And please do not believe any politicians who come to you and tell you they believe in something, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. They're all full of BS, because all they care about is their own narcissism, their own desire for power. Very few people are really interested in serving the government, and then they would leave without pay. I really have never found any of these people, except in my case, I found Bush Sr., I found Baker, who really didn't need money, even Vance on both sides. But most people that I knew were very power hungry. In this administration, you have a president who's totally incapable of telling the truth.
Well, what about those narcissistic photos with them all posing? I mean, you can see they did it over and over again until they got it. But shifting gears back to this key issue, there you are, this guy high level in these Republican administrations, the son of someone you say you admire and who, from your perspective, is a good guy, obviously hardworking and intelligent, George Herbert Walker Bush, any way you slice it. When he didn't become the CIA director, out of whole cloth, folks.
You know why he became CIA director? Even Jeb Bush didn't know that. He became CIA director because Donald Rumsfeld wanted to neutralize him from running for the presidency. And for 20 years, most people don't realize, either Cheney or Rumsfeld were allowed in the White House because they tried to neutralize the future of this quiet man who never promoted himself. I remember his saying to me and others that I'd never speak about myself because my mother wouldn't let me. Do you believe that?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because it's actually come out that George W. did bring in Cheney and Rumsfeld because of that split, and that's then later when Baker and them were sent back in to kind of shut down what they were doing. That would go.
Was one of the reasons why I got on the phone in the middle when I was in Montana, and I told Baker, I called him up. I said, "What in God's name are you doing, sending out the chairman of the Republican Party, who was very bizarre and unusual in his orientations, and talking about abortion?" And I said, "Get rid of these guys. And what are you doing with Cheney and Rumsfeld? I mean, these guys were persona non grata for 20 years in our administration." So basically, you have to understand within the American public has to understand that even under Bush Jr., we had basically a quiet civil war that was going on between his father's people, who are non-ideological, and those who try to implement ideology and their own narcissism. What we have now is a very narcissistic, incompetent president with a very dysfunctional White House and a dysfunctional intelligence community.
Well, that was my next question, Dr. Pieczenik, from your perspective, was why did you, in 2002, come on my show to talk about this Bin Laden being in the deep freeze and to question 9/11? We're going to come back, talk about that, and then we're going to go to your phone calls with Dr. Steve Pieczenik. What incredible info. But he told you this Bin Laden thing's a fraud. Why would they do something that is so cartoonishly satirical, where, and I'm not just saying this to make it come true, because I was pretty depressed yesterday, but now the tables are turning. It is exploding in their face. I mean, it's almost more scary, Doctor, that you're probably right, that they have the power, they have the control, so they're able to do what they want. They think they're smart, But at the end of the day, they're making a lot of things that look like big mistakes as the Republic slides towards collapse. So why? During the break, I said, so you're saying they just did this to make Obama look good? And you said, no, to make him survive.
It's about the word that you want to use right now, the key word that they did all of this psyops resurrection of Osama Bin Laden, which is a joke and a sick joke and a cynical joke on the American public, treating them as if we were stupid, is desperation. They are so desperate to make Obama viable, to negate the fact that he may not have been born here, any questions about his backgrounds, any irregularities about his backgrounds, to make him look assertive, to make sure that Gates goes out in a clean sweep and that he's done what he's done. This is a good man, Gates, and bringing in a man who is questionably qualified to be Secretary of Defense, who is questionably qualified to be CIA Director, Panetta, to bring in a whole other staff that really has not been very effective, and to reelect this president again so the American public can be duped once again after we've been duped by Bush Jr. and Clinton. The point is they've underestimated the American public. Again, you can thank David Axelrod of the White House, this very self-aggrandizing, very pretentious man who thinks he understands the American public as he polls them every minute. And basically what we have here is a desperate situation on behalf of an incompetent president who's not told the truth, who hopes to be reelected because he has nothing to offer but words which are totally meaningless and will hopefully get forth. On the other hand, let me warn you that the Republicans and other parties have no candidates that are capable of filling the role that America needs today, which is a pragmatic, non-narcissistic, non-egoistic, practical man or woman who has served our country on behalf of our country, hopefully in the military, hopefully in business, and hopefully has had a clean history and can understand where we're going strategically and tactically. That has not happened in the past 24 years. That's basically where we are today, in desperation with capital cronyism, corruption, and non-transparency. What we need now is Tahrir Square in Washington, D.C., and all over the country where people will go...
We're going to talk about that when we come back and then take calls, but in the minute or two we have left in this short segment, why did you go public in 2002 with something at the time, that sounded a little bit wild to some people, but I knew it had a historical basis, and say...
Everybody who has accused me of making wild statements regretted it 10 years later. Aldo Moro did, Pol Pot did, Noriega, all regretted the fact when I said to them, you're leaving and you're not staying, they were gone. The reason I came forth and I said, I warned Bush Jr. and Cheney and Rumsfeld, you will pay for the crimes you've committed against the American public, and part of that is this nonsense of Osama Bin Laden being the leader of some nonsensical group that we created under the Carter administration, was fostered through tens of years, and going into Pakistan through the nonsensical war that didn't exist to allow men and women to die.
Are you bottom line saying they ran the attacks or they hired some criminal group to do it?
No. They ran the attacks. The 9/11 is a total manufacture of one organization, the White House under Bush Jr. Bush Jr., Cheney, Rumsfeld.
Unbelievable. What else? Stay there, sir. Stay there.
Omar Khalilzad, Elliot Abrams, who's now at the CFR.
Stay there. Repeat that.
I'm happy to confront them.
Stay there. Let's come back and repeat that because the music was playing. This is absolutely devastating. Dr. Steve Pieczenik's got major credibility, and he is going all the way today, putting it on the table. This is off the charts. We'll be right back. Stay with us.